Good morning, I'm Hannah Thibodeau. You're watching CBC News Network, and we begin this hour in Quebec City, where an important campaign is now underway.
You do it to win it again, a strong majority.
That was just a short time ago, Premier François Legault officially kicking off Quebec's general election. All the major parties are ready to begin campaigning, and by the time the final votes are tallied, Quebec's legislature could look very different. Of the 34 members who say they aren't seeking re-election, 22 are women. However, at least two parties say they will be fielding more female candidates than men. Quebec's provincial election is scheduled for October 3rd. Let's dig more into this with Marty Patriquin. He's a Quebec correspondent at The Logic. Great to see you, Marty.
Hey, Hannah, how are you doing?
Good. Let's get right to it. Campaign kicked off. What do we expect?
Relatively quick campaign. The election's in October, so it's relatively quick. What we're going to see, look, the CAQ is running on its legacy. It's running on the 2.5 years of COVID. It's running on where they came out pretty good, all things considering. They're running on economic relaunch, and they're running on a suite of identity bills. The muscling up of Bill 101 with Bill 96, the secularism bill, all very controversial stuff. Horribly cynical and, in my opinion, awful. But it's what the majority of Quebecers outside of the island of Montreal want, and that's what's going to help them propel them in the election. It's going to be very, very difficult for any party to catch up to the CAQ.
That's interesting because there are some things that didn't play in Legault's favor during the COVID pandemic, including long-term care. Is that something that could potentially hurt him?
The long-term care thing is the one sort of Achilles heel that he has. But other than that, and look, the long-term care has been a problem in Quebec as it was in Ontario for decades. It's not to say that the CAQ is responsible for this. They just sort of carried on the status quo, and then COVID happened, and it sort of exposed all these shortcomings in the system. The fascinating thing for me is, CAQ is ostensibly a right-of-center government. If you look at the right-of-center governments across the country, so you can look at Alberta, you can look at Saskatchewan, you can look at Ontario, all those premiers suffered to a certain extent because of their handling of COVID. That didn't happen in Quebec whatsoever, aside from the long-term care issue, which is, I don't want to diminish it, it's very, very serious. But it didn't really hurt. In fact, it helped Legault during the whole thing, which is kind of ironic because, Quebec had quite high COVID rates, had upsized number of deaths, etc. It didn't hurt him. In fact, a lot of Quebecers really continue to praise his handling of the pandemic. And that's something that is really working in favor for him going into this election.
Some of the other party leaders, what do you think are the issues they're facing right now, just to keep up?
Name recognition.
Yes.
Paul St. Pierre Plamondon, if I say this name to anybody here, we have the politically inclined watching CBC right now. Paul St. Pierre Plamondon. The vast majority of people have no idea who he is. He's the leader of the PQ. And he's a guy who is trying to sort of bring his party up back to the glory days against the CAQ, which is essentially taken what the PQ was doing back before and removed the issue of sovereignty. And it's worked like hell for the CAQ, but it's come at the expense of the PQ. And the interesting thing you see now is, this is the first day of the campaign, you see that the CAQ leader, François Legault, Premier of Quebec, his first day, he's going into PQ territory because he's going to grab the idea is to snatch up the last little bits of PQ seats out there and essentially remove the party from the political reality in Quebec. It's really quite something.
Yeah, at least two of the Quebec political parties are saying that they're going to be fielding more women than men as candidates. What do you think this tells you? And I find this fascinating, too, because of what we're seeing in politics right now.
Yeah, Quebec has always been sort of on the forefront. Certainly since the Quiet Revolution, we've been on the forefront of women's rights here in Quebec, and it's something that is this isn't something that's come by lately. It's not something that has become a political issue, I guess, just in the last few election cycles. It's always been there. This issue is being run, the idea of running more women candidates than men or having parity was something that was very important to François Legault last time around. Have Quebec Solidaire, which is the leftist center party that has most of its seats in and around Montreal. They're running 70 out of 125. It is, I mean, look, it depends on where you're putting those women. Are you putting them in areas where they have absolutely no chance? Candidats poteaux, or post candidates, as I call them, or they're called here. The idea that they just have their face on a sign and they have no absolute chances of winning. That's where it really gets interesting. To François Legault's credit, his cabinet contained a large number of women in prominent positions. I think that's something that's important to say.
Just finally, what do you think the headline will be today, and what will you be watching for in particular in this race?
I'm wondering what's going to happen in Montreal.
Right.
We haven't talked about the Liberal. It's very, very telling that we haven't talked about the Liberal Party of Quebec.
Kind of is, isn't it?
It's amazing. And Dominique Anglade, who's the leader there, who's a former CAQ MNA, is struggling. It's very, very difficult for a party that, ostensibly is on the multiculturalist side of things, who is, let's put it very blankly, as a black woman, is having some difficulty, both in terms of name recognition, both in terms of support, both in terms of members of the Liberal Party, down to 20,000. They had very, very bad fundraising numbers over the last year, and the party itself admits it. She's going to be having some tough times in Montreal. Not only is the CAQ running some fairly strong candidates in the city, but they also face push from Quebec Solidaire on the left side of things, and a nascent party called I'm just going to sorry, I just blanked on the name, but it's essentially an English rights party that is going to sort of go after some of that traditional liberal support. They won't get very far, I don't think, but suffice to say is the only thing is that underscores is that the Liberal Party of Quebec is fighting a battle on three fronts in Montreal.
Yeah, you make a very valid point that we didn't even really bring that up during our conversation. Headline today, what do you think it's going to be?
Legault's in PQ territory. Legault is trying to win more seats in the, this is a hell of a long headline, but Legault, sorry, let's start that over. Legault goes after PQ and will probably get the PQ vote.
Okay. You know what? Great chatting with you as always, Marty.
Thanks, Hannah.
Martin Patriquin is the Quebec correspondent at The Logic, and reach him in Montreal.